Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in, everyone. Happy Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us right here, Fantasy Life on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis with you for the next couple hours, continuing to break down everything from the NFL draft. We've got veteran winners. We've got, Adam, new projections on the website as well, fantasylife.com, to go and check those out from Dwayne McFarland. He went through the rookie running backs. There's some highs and there's some lows that we're going to talk about, and a lot of everything else. How's it going? How you doing?
Going well here on a Sunday, so yeah, definitely breaking down all the action from the draft and starting to think ahead, because I know people sit here and are like, oh, it's only May. These drafts are going to be ahead of us before you know. Obviously, people doing best ball right now, but our redraft leagues will start sooner than you think.
I'm in one right now just for Fantasy Life, to do an article. It's killing me. I've been sniped every way I could get sniped. I'm just sitting here like, how could I have this feeling at the beginning of May? It's gross, but it's been interesting to see, because when we go against anyone at Fantasy Life, anyone in the industry, they're all so sharp, so you really can't get away. And some people draft the same as you, so you're looking around, you're like, okay, I got Bijan in the first, and then I said, all right, 0 RB. Oh, look around me, everyone's 0 RB. So now I'm just stuck with. Yeah, that's just my rant for the day. But
it's better to do that now. Like, you should always test yourself, and if you feel this way in May, then it'll just prepare you for your future draft. So it's always good to get tested early, and you're just dipping your toe in the water right now, and it just is going to set the baseline for what you're going to do in the future. So it's always good to get started early, and we're still in the infancy stages. You're still kind of putting together your rankings, your plan. So it's always good to just jump in, get started. And yeah, it might seem challenging at first, especially when you're so many really great players here at Fantasy Life. But it's better to test yourself out like that too. And especially for those challenging leagues, it's going to help set you up. I play in a lot of high stakes formats, so you just don't get any value the closer you get to the season. So that's why I like to do a couple early on, like late July, early August. I always wind up doing like real big ones right at the start of the season. The problem with that is a lot of the value is gone. Everyone is on top of everything. The market adjusts, players rise. But yeah, it's nice to jump in now and just get a start, kind of see where players are going and figure out who's undervalued, who's overvalued. So it's always good to challenge yourself early on.
My favorite thing to do, if you're able to get into some of these early drafts that don't count for anything, that's what I want to make sure to specify. If you are able to get in with either some of your friends or do some of the mock drafts, my favorite thing to do, so what I'm doing in this draft, Adam, is kind of making myself a little uncomfortable too, and drafting a way that I don't usually draft, just to see, because we all know we go into these drafts in, like you said, August, September, and we want to have a plan. We go in and we say, I want to target these guys, I want to go 0 RB, I want to get this kind of quarterback, and then it all blows up in our face. So for drafts like this, where again we're doing it for an article, which is great, but I've got no money in it, I'm going to invest no time. It's not a league that I'm actually going to have to make any changes to. So I said to myself, okay, I'm going to try a different way to draft, because I just want to see how I do if that ever does happen to me in a draft that does have some stakes in it. So I took Brock Bowers my second overall pick at the towards the end of the second round, which I never usually do.
But he fell, right? Because everyone else passed on him.
Yes, yeah. He was right. It was Brock Bowers. Trey McBride went exactly after, and I said, you know what? If Brock is here, I'm going to take him, even though I don't like to draft an early tight end that early in the second round, because I feel like I'm going to have to chase the rest of the draft. I'm okay with it, and so it made me uncomfortable. But I'm like, all right, let's see how this draft goes after I take him. But he did fall a little bit,
and that's the whole point. The key to successful drafting is to take the value when it's presented to you, and if also do something that you're not accustomed to. You said you went in with a plan, 0 RB. Well, if everyone else is doing that, now you're not getting the same value. So you adjust, and now it allows you to say, okay, well, I don't usually feel comfortable taking a tight end in round 2. Let me do it here because he fell a little bit further than I expected, and see how it pans out. You might like the team. You're like, you know what? It's not that bad. Maybe I'm going to use this in my real draft. So I know, and then obviously in best ball, you can do different things, because I'm sure you're going to play a multitude of different best ball. You're going to have a lot of teams, so you can diversify a little bit. But yeah, that's the good thing about doing these mocks, and especially too, it's to help the readers as well. and kind of learn the player pool, because that's kind of what I do with every sport that I play fantasy, is start drafting early and deeper rounds as well to know the player pool, just identify yourself, because this way when you go into your leagues that are lesser, maybe you do a draft early, it's 24, 25, 26 rounds. I do a lot of season-long leagues where it's 12 teams, 20 rounds. So once you get into that, you'll be good to go. But it is good to try different strategies at this point of the year to see, because again, a lot of people are very uncomfortable taking a tight end early. And it goes to what you were saying, where you feel like you're chasing because now you're behind on the receiver or running back position. I'm interested to see, because this is the one thing that I usually don't like and this is years, and every year is different. It's a different puzzle to solve every year. I think it's very difficult to take that tight end in round 2 and then take an elite quarterback. I think that's where you really fall behind. So I think I'm interested to see. My guess is you're not going to take a quarterback soon.
You know what? I don't think so, because obviously, so we're in the middle of the 7th round right now. And so I took Bijan first, and then I went with Brock Bowers. And immediately I said to myself, okay, I know this group and these wide receivers, these good wide receivers, they're not going to last at all. So I came back, Garrett Wilson, Zay Flowers, DK Metcalf, which I don't think is super strong. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 3 numbers. That's hoping that Aaron Rodgers goes there. If he doesn't, then that's a whole different conversation. And then come back around. And this is where it got kind of interesting, Adam, with this draft, was that I was curious where people were going to start taking the rookie running backs. Because I'm going into the 6th round and I say to myself, okay, I only have Bijan. I want to make sure to get, my second running back who's going to get some good amount of volume, good amount of targets. And so I went with Aaron Jones, thinking that maybe some of these guys were going to come back to me. No, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, all off the board. So my 3rd running back is Tony Pollard, which again, I don't hate, because we're talking about running back veteran winners. And Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears were pretty big winners after the draft. And so it was between him and DeAndre Swift was already off the board. But yeah, it's just always an interesting place to be this early. Especially this early, I always want to see where these rookie running backs, wide receivers, all the rookies, where they're going and where they're falling, so that I know when I go into, the best ball drafts like you talked about, I kind of know where they're going to start to fall. But I'm not going to take, I might hold out because I have Garrett Wilson. I might hold out for Justin Fields, but I don't know how long he's going to be there. So, getting one of those quarterbacks, he's still on the board. Baker's still on the board, but I still have some work to do with the running back position and maybe getting another wide receiver before I hit that. But yeah, you do always feel like you're chasing, or at least I do when I take a tight end that early, but there are ways to get around that. You just have to follow the board, look ahead of you, look behind you. I'm right in the middle, and see what other people need. And that's going to dictate how you're going to draft too.
For sure. I think Pollard, though, as RB3 is very solid. He had a very good year last year. He played through some injuries as well. So there were definitely some games where he wasn't even close to 100%, but he went out there. You'd like to see more touchdowns, and maybe the offense could be a little bit better this year, lead to more opportunities. Spears will be in the mix, but it was a good year for Pollard. I mean, he had 301 touches last year.
Between Pollard and Swift, where would you go if you had them right next to each other? Would you go Pollard?
I think it's hard to not take Swift there. I think you got it. It's close.
He was off the board, but that's who I wanted, because I said, listen, and we're going to talk about DeAndre Swift in depth a little bit later, but looking at that offense, and he really was a huge winner. But the only other thing I worry about, and not necessarily worry, but I'm going to be interested, is that I loved Jordan Mason going to the Minnesota Vikings. And we know Aaron Jones had a phenomenal season, but he was actually one of the running backs that did get banged up, not for a long period of time, but he was injured last season. He gets to be another year older, and Jordan Mason in that offense, I might make sure that at the end of this draft, I can handcuff him just in case something bad happens.
Yeah, look, we've gone through this with Aaron Jones for a long time, and last year it took leaving Green Bay for him to get a career high in carries, 255. He played all 17 games. So I think Minnesota looked at it and said, look, we don't want to do this again. He turns 30 in December. Because it felt like all those years in Green Bay, it was strategic, where they felt, look, if we limit Aaron Jones, don't give him 300 touches, don't give him over 250 carries, that's when he's most effective. And it worked. And we see that. A lot of times people get upset, especially in fantasy, like, this running back is so efficient. Why aren't they giving him more carries? These teams see something. And I think Minnesota has said, look, We got a lot out of him last year. He had over 300 touches. He also had 51 receptions. So a year older, you can't expect that again. So it was smart. And we know we've seen Mason come in when asked, different system, obviously, but still a good Minnesota offense where that is like the running back that you want to take late, especially if you have Aaron Jones.
Yeah, and it was always just the other thing with Green Bay was that they always like to split a bit of the work, right? It was always using 2 running backs. And then Josh Jacobs comes in and they're like, throw it out the window. We're not going to do that anymore. And I know a lot of that has to do with Jordan Love was injured last season. He openly admitted that, that was bothering him for the whole season. So yeah, with some of these, I'm just excited. Like it's very early, but it's exciting if you can go in and get into some of these, just mock drafts and kind of find your place and find your footing here with the landscape. It's going to change from now until even July. But yeah, it's a fun time to be in there. George Kittle was someone that I was kind of looking for. I was keeping an eye on him, Adam, to see
5th round, I'm guessing. I'm not in this draft, but where?
No, he was in the 4th round.
Okay.
Yeah, he was pretty quickly after I took Brock and after Trey McBride went. He went like that next round, which I completely agree. And let me make sure here. Yeah. Oh no, I'm sorry. 4th round here. He got an extension, though, so that's one of the big pieces of news that wanted to make sure we hit on. He got his extension through the 2029 season. He's going to be, hopefully, a San Francisco 49er. Deal's worth $76.4 million, includes $40 million guaranteed. So, sorry, Trey McBride, you were the highest paid tight end for maybe it was a couple months. It was pretty good. He was all right, but now it is George Kittle, highest paid tight end ever in the NFL. And I was kind of excited about this, Adam, and I know we wrote about this in the newsletter for Friday, but we don't have to wait. Not that we thought that they weren't going to bring George Kittle back, but usually the 49ers take a long time to get these deals done. Like we're going into August and we're sitting here a little bit uncomfortable. Like, when is this going to get done? But they said, no, we're going to get George Kittle. We're going to sign him to that extension. Now we just have to wait for what Brock Purdy's contract's going to look like, but it's all good for George Kittle.
I love George Kittle, the player from real life. Fantasy, it's been back and forth with me just because, I think he's a better player than Travis Kelce. If you put Kittle on Kansas City, he'd put up the same, if not better, numbers. He's not asked to do that in San Francisco. He's had 2 seasons of over 100 targets. He's come close. Last year he had 94. It's just because they've had Christian McCaffrey in the running game. They've had other weapons. Now, we saw last year Debo miss time, not be 100%, Brandon Ayuk go out, so he got a little bit more. It still wasn't enough, though. I mean, he had 94 targets in 15 games. The previous year he had 90 and 16. So that's the biggest problem for Kittle. But I think this year, with the way they're set up, because we don't know if Brandon Ayuk is going to be 100%. Will he be ready for week 1? They have some good receivers with Jennings. And McCaffrey looks like he's healthy, at least to start. But you got to think that Kittle is going to be a primary part of this offense once again. So he had the 8 touchdowns last year. He has at least 6 touchdowns now in 4 straight years. You're going to get 70 to 75 receptions, probably 1,000 yards. So he should be that 3rd tight end off the board. It's just he's never been featured in his offense. He had the 1 year, his 2nd year, where he had 136 targets. And that was by far his best year, where he had 88, 1377 and only 5 touchdowns. But if he could be featured like that, he could put up insane numbers. It's just they don't do that with him. They don't have to, because they spread it around. And also, for many years, they were primarily a running team. I wonder if they want to pass a little bit more with what they have. I mean, yes, McCaffrey's going to get, we expect, a big workload, but maybe they have to tail back a little bit on him because he's older. Yeah. But either way, with Kittle, I'm open to taking him in the 4th round for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you talked about this, you touched on this in the newsletter as well, but the top 3, the tier 1 guys that are all clumped together, it's Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle. After that, you go into Sam Laporta territory, who I think, if we have a conversation, could be in a little bit of a tier of his own. And then you go down to, TJ Hawkinson's going to have, a good offseason to rehab and continue to be closer to 100% ready. You've got Mark Andrews, who we'll talk about in the water cooler, but we should expect Mark Andrews just to continue being with the Baltimore Ravens. And then you go down to David Njoku, Jonnu Smith, Travis Kelce, Tucker Kraft. And Tucker Kraft is where you start tier 3, really. There's a big jump there as well. So, if you don't get those first 3 guys, for me at least, Adam, when I'm drafting, I look around and I say, all right, I'm going to wait, because you and I have gone through some of the numbers where we say, what separated the top 3 guys from last year. It was a lot, but then you get into the, tight end 4 through tight end 12 range, and it really isn't a huge difference. And not to say that means that you can just wait around and you want to wait till the end of your draft and go ahead and get a Isaiah Likely or a Pat Freiermuth. I'm not necessarily saying that, but it's not a huge difference. Once you get the top 3 guys are difference makers, but then it kind of becomes close. And there's always going to be probably someone that, outperforms their ADP, and that's someone that we want to try and target or try and find in our drafts. But that's why I always say, if I don't get those top 3 guys, I'm very comfortable with waiting.
Yeah, nailing the tight end is so critical to having a successful fantasy season. So you're going to have to invest early in the top 3. And yes, there are players that surpass their ADP every year or come off the waiver wire. There wasn't as many last year. Jonnu Smith was probably the best example. I know I drafted him in a league. So usually if it's 18 roster spots or more, I will draft 2 tight ends. If I have 16, and I don't play many leagues like that, maybe there might be like FSGA or something like that. I don't like having 2 tight ends if you have 16 roster spots. If you have 20, I will, especially if I miss out on the top 3, then I want to take 2 cracks, and hopefully one of those guys becomes an every week tight end. So Jonnu Smith last year, I did draft as a backup tight end and wound up cutting him right before he became.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So, and he was the guy pretty much off waivers, but after that, there wasn't many. You had a small stretch for Cade Otton when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were out. And believe it or not, in points per game in PPR formats, Cade Otton was tight end 10. And
that's what I'm saying, though.
He didn't do much.
Exactly. The difference when you get past the top 3, it's just that they get closer and closer. There's not a huge difference.
Not a huge separation. And it usually comes down to touchdowns. So you mentioned Tucker Kraft. The reason why he was up there, touchdowns. He had 7, right? It's not like he didn't even have 50 receptions. So it's a very close line. And if you're trying to stream every week, it can be difficult. So yeah, you have to. That's one of the key things you need to have going in. What is your plan at tight end? You clearly know if you want Bowers or McBride, it's going to take first, second round pick, and then Kittle 4th. And then if you don't get one of those, you got to come up with a plan of what you're going to do at tight end. Because imagine being in a situation last year where you had like Pitts and Kincaid, terrible. There were so many. Even Jake Ferguson was a major disappointment because Dak was out. He was off to a decent start when Dak was in there. He had like 3 straight weeks of double-digit points in PPR. And, I didn't even realize this till the other day when I was looking at things. He didn't score a touchdown last year.
Oh, no, I know, because I targeted him a little bit too often in best ball drafts, because I said to myself, well, this is, and it's unfortunately, Adam, going to be the same exact conversation going into this year where, that you don't add a true number 2 wide receiver. And now we've got, I'm going to have the same conversations to myself. Because,
but it's correct, though. He's got to be the number 2 target in this offense. Even if they add a veteran receiver, depending on who it is, like if they add Amari Cooper, like that doesn't really move the needle much. You have to think that Ferguson's going to be the tight end, the number 2 target in the offense, and positive touchdown regression as well. Like he's got to score at least a few touchdowns this year, I would think.
We would think. You know who I think is undervalued right now when I was watching some of these drafts and just kind of looking around? I think Evan Ingram's a little bit undervalued. He's coming in at like tight end 13. And I don't know why he shouldn't flirt with top 10 tight end rankings going into it. Like, I understand Travis Kelce, so maybe he's right outside of it, but I don't know, for everything it's worth, they also didn't add anyone during the NFL draft. And so that's something you look at where I saw a ton of mocks saying that they were going to go, maybe try and get a Colston Loveland or even some of the later guys like Harold Fannin, Elijah Arroyo, like an ad there. But I don't know, Evan Ingram, with the whole thing that they talked about with the Joker role with Sean Payton and how we know he likes to use his tight ends, not saying that he's going to be exactly like that, but Evan Ingram flirting with tight end 13 makes me kind of want to get him a little bit more.
Yeah, I would put him a little bit higher than that. And we know he's not a big touchdown guy. It's going to come down to how many receptions he has. And he had that huge year 2 years ago, which we know is not going to happen again, where he had 114 targets. But Yeah, they did go out and they paid him too. So you would
They
think
did.
Sean Payton has plans for him.
Yeah, and they didn't really. I mean, in the draft as well, when we talk, it's Cortland Sutton obviously up there, and they got some more weapons, especially with the running backs. But yeah, that's one I'm just keeping. It's one I'm keeping an eye on. And again, that's why it's kind of fun. Where if you're able to go in and do some of these mock drafts, or just kind of look around draft rooms and figure out, where these landing spots are happening right now for any of these, tight ends, wide receivers, quarterbacks, running backs. It's a fun time, especially just make sure putting some money on it. I would add them if I had this draft that I was doing right now for Fantasy Life and there was money on it, I would come in here and I would be upset. It wouldn't be a great Sunday show. I'll just say that. But it's fun to just make yourself a little bit uncomfortable, do some things in those drafts that you don't normally do, just so you can prepare, because we always want to prepare for those drafts, and we always go in with a plan, but those almost never work out. So making yourself uncomfortable now will help you in the long run with your fantasy football drafts for sure. We're going to continue on here. Like I said, we've got new projections for rookie running back workloads, and these are exciting because we've got the top of the top in Ashton Jeanty, and then some that might be sneaky with their ceiling projections. We're going to go through those names coming up next. I had a great cup of coffee today, by the way, Adam. Made me a little, it was a strong cup of coffee. You know when you get those, days where you just drink a strong cup of coffee and it kind of throws you off a little bit? That was me this morning, but we're good now.
How early were you awake today?
6:30.
Oh, damn. You even beat me on a day I get up early to play softball?
Please.
Damn.
Yes, of course I do. A little 6:30, you get up, you get the cup of coffee. Yeah, it was good. It was
7:30 for me.
That's pretty good.
Well, yeah.
For you?
Me.
Yeah. Wow. What time did you go to bed?
Oh, very late. Probably 2:30.
Bad. Okay, we'll work. By the way, a side note, and then we will get to projecting rookie running back workloads. Again, say that 5 times fast. I don't know why I write it like that. I'm going to Chase Field next week, by the way, and I've pinpointed what I'm going to get while watching the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers that I will report back to you on. Do you want to take a guess at how
The candy cotton burrito?
No, I wish. First of all, I did look that up.
They don't have it now?
No. Well, no, because that's that's for the Cardinals. Yeah, only.
Oh, okay.
I wish they transferred that because I would get that in a heartbeat. I'm going to get, and if anyone's out in Arizona or a Diamondbacks fan, you can let me know if you've gotten this, but s'mores nachos. That's what I'm gonna go for.
Really?
Come on, that doesn't sound good.
I don't.
S'mores, so they say a nice twist on s'mores. It has cinnamon, sugar, flour, tortillas, marshmallow fluff, and we hit it with a torch and a little bit of chocolate. Come on.
It sounds like too much sugar for me.
Well, it definitely is too much sugar. I will not finish the whole thing, but that sounds fun. That's my cotton candy burrito.
Who are they playing? Do you know?
The Dodgers.
Oh, okay.
I know.
Good game.
Yeah. It should be a good game.
Have you been to the stadium before?
Yeah, because I went to ASU, so it's been a long
that's what I
time.
figured.
It's been a long time though, so I haven't been in a.
Is it a nice park?
It's fine.
Okay,
it doesn't
not a ringing endorsement.
But I'm spoiled because I grew up with Safeco, aka now T-Mobile, which I think personally, even bias aside, I think that's a top 5 ballpark. It's so nice.
I've heard good things, so
yeah.
I haven't been to the West Coast, so
yeah,
I need to get out to some of those parks. San Diego, right, is also a good one.
Petco is beautiful.
Yeah,
that's
so
top 5
I need to get out there.
Oh man, yeah.
The one that I really want to go to is PNC Park in Pittsburgh. Everyone raves about it.
Yes, that's where they have the beautiful background, right?
The bridge,
yeah, the bridge and everything. Yeah, that sounds nice.
And tickets are very easy to get, obviously, because the Pirates are never any good. So.
sorry, Pirates fans. They're like, dang, I'm just here to talk about football. I'm getting shots thrown my way. So if anyone's gone and gotten those, by the way, that's what I'm gonna go and get. They also have a giant loaded barbecue chicken potato, but I think I'd fall asleep after that. If you're eating a baked potato, anyway.
So you're gonna get there early to make sure you get this and not miss any of the game, or you'll miss the game.
No, I don't really. I do care about the game, but I'll miss the game. It's not the Mariners.
What if it was your team? What if it was the Mariners?
I would. Well, depending on which Mariners team I get, sometimes they just make me so angry that I just have to get up and walk around. The last game I went to was them against the Angels last season, and that's when they gave up, I think, 3 runs in the 9th, and I just had to get up, and I was like, okay, I can't continue to do this. But yeah, I don't know. I might get there early. Might get it. Depends on who's pitching. I think it might be a bullpen game. I'm unsure though. If it's a bullpen game, I don't.
Wait, when are you going?
Thursday.
Thursday. That's too far in advance to even know at this point.
I know. We'll try to get some sources and see if I can get a little inside information.
Well, okay. The scheduled starters as of now are Yamamoto and Fought. So
I haven't seen. Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's a good matchup there.
All right, then I won't get up if it's Yamamoto. If it's a bullpen game, I might get up to get the s'mores nachos.
Yeah, Well, they pretty much keep them on well, no, I think
usually
they did
Friday.
Yeah, I think they said they're actually gonna maybe push them up because they usually have been giving them 5 days rest. So that'll be a good one.
Yeah,
enjoy that.
I'll send you a picture of the s'mores nachos.
Yeah. Make sure you send it when it's complete. I want to see you eat
No, there's no way.
Everything
there's
of
no
that.
way. I would have a sugar crash.
What is it, $20?
Oh, don't ask me that. I don't want to know that yet. I don't want to know.
Don't worry about price. You just give your card. You don't even ask.
I know, it's horrible. I've learned my lesson, but I was able to I got paid back from that. I just didn't tell our CEO Elliot what it was. I said it was my dinner.
This time you're not getting paid back, so you might want to know.
I just have to make sure.
Like,
all
wait,
right.
$40 for s'mores? What is this?
It's not going to be 40. Maybe
20.
Oh man, you think 20?
I mean, I'm from New York, so everything at Citi Field is like 20 or more. So
if it's over 15, I might not get it because that seems like a lot. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out together.
Report back.
I'll keep I know everyone's going to be on the edge of their seat on Thursday waiting for this photo. But let me just say, guys that we know, we would never get up and leave if they were on the field playing. You see that? You see what I did there?
Good
there we
segue.
go. Ashton
Professional.
Look it's like mid-season form right now. Ashton Jeanty, by the way. But again, these projections are live at fantasylife.com. Dwayne McFarland does an incredible job with everything he does, but this is an article that I recommend everyone go and check out. Ashton Jeanty, obviously drafted by the Las Vegas Raiders here. Everything about him we know, Adam, is just he really, when you look at these numbers, he could really be the RB over 1 overall as a rookie. If these numbers hold true, and that would make everyone happy where you're drafting him right now because he's already expensive. But the floor projection, 12.8 points per game. The ceiling projection, 22.8 points per game. And even the median projection here, Adam, is where it's a sweet spot we would love. We would love 16.4 points per game from Ashton Jeanty as a rookie. And so this is one of those things where I know we've talked about him a lot, and it's just basically been, if you're going to get Ashton Jeanty in the first round, we're not going to shake our heads at it because he really does have the overall, not only profile, but he's in this offense that they're going to give him the keys to the backfield. He has no competition whatsoever, that he really could become the RB1 overall if he really does hit these numbers.
Yeah, and if you just look at last year points per game, Saquon Barkley was 1 in PPR, 22.14. Then you had Gibbs, 19.84. Bijan Robinson, 19.24. Derrick Henry, 19.2. And remember, those were massive seasons for Barkley and Henry. We know Henry doesn't catch a lot of passes out of the backfield. Barkley actually didn't catch a lot of passes either. So those were heavily based on yards and touchdowns. And we know Gibbs a lot more involved in the passing game. So, yeah, I would say you're probably getting between the median and ceiling projection on Jeanty. And wouldn't be crazy if he hit the ceiling projection. They drafted him early. Yeah. We know he's going to get massive volume. So it comes down to how good is the offense going to be and how many touchdowns can he get. But certainly it's improved from what they had last year, and that they actually have a better quarterback in Geno Smith. He's not the elite quarterback, but we know he can run an offense.
And now on Underdog, like the board. So right when we were going into the NFL draft, Ashton Jeanty was firmly in the first round, but he was more pick 11, 12, right? It was going to be Jamar Chase, Saquon, flip them any way you want for the 101. And then Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs were always ahead of Ashton Jeanty. But there was a lot of wide receivers that went before the Ashton Jeanty pick on Underdog, Adam. And so those guys were Puka, Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, and then it would be Ashton Jeanty. Now you look on Underdog, and Ashton Jeanty has gone up to the 8th pick. So it's Puka Nacua and then Ashton Jeanty, wide receivers behind him, Malik, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico, Brian Thomas Jr. And I think that's the only question I'm going to have when I am drafting Ashton Jeanty this year is, okay, do I want to get my wide receivers now, or am I just going to draft Ashton Jeanty?
And there will be drafts where he goes higher. I started a slow draft. I had pick 8. Jeanty was gone. He didn't even make it to me. I think he went either 6 or 7. So you're going to start to see that. There's going to be a lot of excitement for him, and there's always going to be someone in a draft that's willing to push him higher. It's kind of crazy, though. Like, I don't understand why the draft needed to be complete for this to happen.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Right? Like, we all knew that he was, for a long time, as we got closer to the draft, it looked like Vegas was the destination spot. And we had this discussion before. Was there anywhere where we would have said, oh, no, we can't take him? Because it was likely going to be Vegas. There was some talk about Jacksonville. I think that was smoke. I don't think that was real.
I don't even think that would have been bad. Like you said, he could have landed anywhere.
And Chicago was one of the other destinations, which we would have loved even more than Vegas. So it's kind of crazy that he's rising now, but I guess that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to have all the information, which I understand. Like if you're playing 25, in those $25 underdogs where you're drafting and you kind of just want to wait for a second. But we always knew he was going to go, and I can see him going as high as 6. I could see people say that they want him ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs. Not necessarily saying that I agree with that, but if you and I draft so much, and that's the difference here, and that's what we always want to say, is that you and I always want to sprinkle of everyone here, especially in the first round, because we draft from so many different places and we do a ton of drafts where I could say to myself, all right, I'm at pick 5. I don't have any Ashton Jeanty yet. I'm just going to take him here because I know obviously he's not going to come back to me in the second round. But yeah, right now it's Saquon, Bijan, Jahmyr, and then the wide receivers going ahead of him, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to put my hand up and say I think Ashton Jeanty goes ahead of Puka Nacua at the end of, if we're talking August, September, I think that he could go ahead of him as well. It just all comes down to preference, though, on the draft or in the first round.
I think in redraft leagues he will, because there will be people who want to get that 3 down back early and then go into the receiver position. In basketball with underdog, it will be a little bit more dicey because people load up on the receivers early. But you are right about diversifying. If you're going to play in 8 to 12 drafts or even more, you want to diversify early, because you don't want to get the same player and then he gets hurt. And now you have so many teams that are in trouble. Now, to me, in the second half of the draft, if there's someone you really like, I do not mind going all in. Because if that player gets hurt or doesn't perform, it's not going to crush your team as much. You're talking double-digit rounds where a lot of those players don't work out. Like 2 years ago when I was getting Kyren Williams in every draft, I'm not going to say, well, I have Kyren Williams on 5 teams now, I'm going to shot. Well, no, he was the 12th, 13th round pick. If that hits like it did, money in the bank. If it doesn't, okay, move on. Talking redraft leagues where you can cut. And even in basketball, like if you have a strong feeling and you feel someone is undervalued right now, you don't need to diversify in the second half of the draft. It's early where you want to, because if you take the same player in round 1 and they get injured, that really hurts so many teams where you're scrambling.
Cam Scatterboo is my Kyren Williams this year for you.
Okay.
10th round, I'm going to take him almost every time.
Is that more of the heart? But no, I think
for sure it's more.
But no,
I
think
don't hate
it's
that
in a
landing
spot where
Tyrone, and he's a skilled pass catcher. He's a bowling ball, by the way. If you haven't watched Cam Scatterboo just run, here's the thing. I think he started to become trendy towards towards when the draft was happening, and I didn't expect that, I guess. But then Good Morning Football has him on. They're wearing his jersey and stuff, and I was like, oh shoot. I was like, no. Don't do this. Don't show Cam Scatterboo before but he is so likable. He's a hard runner, and he gives it his all every single play. Like, I've got some stats we'll talk about later with him, but yeah, he's gonna be my Kyren.
Well, you're likely gonna have to take him a little early in this fantasy life draft, because everyone knows they want to upset you, get you rattled, and throw you off your game.
Exactly.
So,
they'll know. They'll
can't
go,
let it happen,
Kendall,
though.
Cam Scatterboo, forks up. That's why it's so not fun when you draft with people, 1, that know you, 2, that are really good and sharp analysts. That's just it's a recipe for disaster. So I am going to take him early, and I'm not going to care. So if you see it in the article later, don't think that it's crazy. All right, let's continue. We got way more projections that I want to go through, because I do want to talk through Omarion Hampton. Right now might be a little undervalued, but by the time mid-season, towards the end of the season comes around, he could be that RB1 in that backfield. RJ Harvey as well, Quinshon Judkins. We're going to continue going through these rookie running backs here coming up next. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam Ronis with you here today. Appreciate you hanging out with us for the couple hours that we're on. We're talking all things fantasy football. Maybe, we'll throw in a little baseball talk, a little food talk, because you know us. We can't get through it unless we do that. Quinshon Judkins for the Browns. We're continuing on here. And again, this article is live at fantasylife.com. And same with all of our projections. But projecting these rookie running back workloads. I said, Adam, I'm in this draft. And I went out and I said, all right, maybe I'm going to go get Aaron Jones because I was hoping that some of these rookie running backs would come back to me. And of course they did not, but that's fine. I'm going to find a different way to go through it. I will talk about the, the bigger guys, the RJ Harveys, the Omarion Hamptons, but I wanted to talk with you because I know we haven't yet gone into Quinshon Judkins with the Browns. So floor projection for him, 8.6 fantasy points per game. And then the ceiling, 16.8 points per game. Median projection, 11.1 points per game, which I know if you hear 11.1, a lot of you listening are going to be like, well, that's not a fun, sexy number that I want to go and target Quinshon Judkins for. But that's like the median projection when you look at it is assuming he takes over the early down work right from the start, but doesn't have that passing role. We're just expecting that maybe Jerome Ford, Dylan Sampson are going to continue getting those roles when you look at these numbers. So he's getting projected for 55% of the attempts, 30% route participation. And it's a similar workload to Omarion Hampton, who we're going to talk about. But Adam, the one thing you have to look at, especially with Quinshon Judkins, and when you compare him to some of these other rookie running backs, Omarion Hampton's in a better quality offense. So that's the one thing here is there's a lot of questions with the Browns. The quarterback situation is going to come into play here, but I don't hate it. He's obviously giving you those numbers, and when you look at it, he's not in that RB, high-end RB1 range. He's not going to be there, not even mid-range RB1 finish, but a low-end RB2 as someone that you can target, not later in drafts, but just a little bit later than some of the other rookie running backs feels like where he's going to be.
Yeah, and that's the issue, is the offense and how much passing down work is he going to get, because if you're in an offense that's not that good, you're not going to be heavily involved in the passing game. The lack of touchdowns will be a problem. So that's the concern I have right now with him.
And it doesn't, and again, it could get better, right? It's one of these things where these rookies, we always talk about it, where they just show up and maybe not at the beginning, but in the middle of the season, back half of the season, they take over these roles. But it really does, it does feel like when we look at the median projection that he is kind of giving away the passing reps to other running backs, more specifically Jerome Ford, who I believe, I haven't looked at, I saw a little news blurb where maybe he took a pay cut for this year, but Judkins is still going to be a good running back, but you just have to kind of temper the expectations with him as more of that low end RB2. Now, when we talk about Omarion Hampton, it's kind of swinging the other way, where I could see him continuing to climb up the ranks, especially, midway through the season, back half of the season. Floor projection right now, 9.3 points per game, median projection, 12 points per game, and then ceiling 17.9. Now, Adam, I don't think, and we've talked about this, I don't think Najee Harris is going away right away. Like, he only signed a one-year contract too. So when I say that Omarion Hampton's a really good dynasty pickup this season, it's not to say that he's not a good pickup in redraft either. But all this to say, Najee Harris has 4 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. He's never missed a game in his career, and he's always been durable. There's a reason that they brought him in. So I don't think Najee Harris goes away very quickly, but Omarion Hampton could also quickly rise up the ranks, show that he's just a really, really solid running back, and not overtake him is the wrong way to say it, because I do think he's going to be a little bit more talented, but we could see a lot more of him in the middle back half of the season. But I do like those projections.
Everyone in fantasy wants Najee Harris to go away.
I know. I don't get that.
It's not, well, because he's not a flashy back. He just he doesn't have these big plays. He just grinds it out. And coaches like that at times. Mm-hmm. He stays on the field. He's healthy. You mentioned he was given a $5 million contract with incentives of up to $9 million. Just for 1 year. So Hampton and Dynasty, absolutely really good offense. They want to run the football, the offense you want to be in as a running back. But this year, it is a concern. Maybe in the second half, he does take over, but I just don't think Harris is going to go away. As much as people want that to happen, they obviously would prefer the younger back in Hampton. He has the higher ceiling. But that is my concern. And if people are going to overdraft Hampton, I'll let them, because
he is expensive.
Yeah, I don't think I'm paying that price. I think
he's would you pay 4th round? That's where he's going right now.
I think the market's a little too high on him right now.
4th round and Najee Harris going in the 9th round. I'd wait. I'd go get a Najee in the 9th round.
Do I want Najee either? Probably
as your
not.
4th running back?
As my 4th, he's okay.
Okay.
But again, he was appealing if he owned the backfield. He's not going to. I mean, Hampton's going to be... It'll probably be a split to start. I mean, I was thinking the same thing when they drafted him, that maybe in the second half, maybe you see it. But what would it... I guess 75-25 or 65-35 in favor of...
Yes,
of
probably
Hampton,
more
maybe?
of that 75. But that I think that's being really, really generous, right?
Or do they just become so run heavy that they just... that both guys have decent workloads? So I think it is something to keep an eye on. But I do think Hampton's being projected a little high right now because Harris is not going to go away. As much as everyone doesn't want to see him for fantasy, we understand. Again, it's just not flashy for fantasy.
I just think, like, I know Najee is standing in the way of Omarion Hampton, especially for the passing down work in year 1. But there is still, there's.
I mean,
still
the goal line work. Who's the goal line back? Might be Najee.
Might be Najee. That's what I'm saying. 9th round. I might scoop that up because I think he's gonna. People are gonna want a piece of this offense too. We can't forget how good this offense was last season. I can't forget because I wasn't expecting that. And so you tell me both of them are good to go. Bottom line, I think Omarion Hampton's going to be expensive and he's gonna have a lot of ranges. Season long formats though, like that borderline RB2. Low-end RB2 with RB1 upside in case anything happens to Najee. But again, we haven't seen that. That guy is durable as all can be. So that's what I'm looking at for him. And I do think I might get a few pieces of Najee Harris in these drafts here in a little bit as well. All right, continuing on. And that article is at fantasylife.com, by the way. All of our projections for the rookies there as well. So make sure you go and check that out. I did want to continue talking about the tight ends because I know we talked about some of the not good landing spots. Feels like almost all of them, Adam, might not have been good landing spots. We're going to continue talking about the rookie tight ends coming up next. All right, fantasy football fans, the NFL season might be long over, but next season's action, as you know, is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it, and all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change, and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis with you right here, going through the tight end landscape, more specifically the rookies and where they landed. We've talked a lot about Tyler Warren going into this. He still landed with the Indianapolis Colts. Adam, having a tough time. I'm going back and forth with Colston Loveland. Because on one hand, he went ahead of Tyler Warren, went over to the Chicago Bears, who, by the way, again, won the offseason. Like they hang the banner for offseason winners because the Bears were able to do it. But I want to believe that the 6'6", 248 pound tight end is going to go in there and get some targets. But then I also look and I say, all right, well, they signed Komet to a 4-year, $50 million extension, which they really can't get out of that contract until 2026 at the earliest. And then you've got Rome Odunze, you've got DJ Moore, you've got Luther Burden now over there. We've talked a little bit about DeAndre Swift. I just don't know where he's going to land, if he's going to be the third best passing weapon, like passing option for them, pass catcher, or if it's going to be one of those things where we just don't really see him that much in his rookie season.
He could have gone to a better landing spot, but this is a new regime that spent a top 10 pick on him. So I think they are going to use him. And it comes down to you really don't need to do much at the tight end position to finish as a tight end 1. All you really need from Loveland is 6 to 7 touchdowns. Is it that outlandish in this offense for that to happen?
Shouldn't be.
It's not like DJ Moore's a big road zone threat or a Dunze. So, yeah, Komet's going to be on the field, but Loveland's more like a wide receiver anyway. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually open to taking him at in that 11, 12, 13 range if he's there, because look at the other tight ends there. Like, who are you going to really say, oh, I can't draft this guy over? Dallas Goedert, we've seen this. Dallas Goedert only succeeds where you're going to rank him as the weekly starter at tight end if A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith is out. That's it. If everyone is there, he's just not going to produce. So Dalton Kincaid, okay, maybe we're buying that. All right, the knee injury was a factor, but the Bills have kind of showed us what they're going to do. They're going to spread the ball around. They scored 30 points per game last year. We keep complaining about the receivers. I think it becomes a factor in the postseason against top teams, but during the regular season, they get by. So you just have a lot of tight ends in that range where it's like, why would you take them over Loveland? Where, yes, maybe he's the third option and it doesn't work out, but I could see a scenario where he scores 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, catches 50 passes, 600 yards. Go look at the tight ends last year. That puts him in a low tight end range. So a tight end 1. So I'm willing to take him just because we don't know what the ceiling is. And a lot of those tight ends in that range, we know it's just not going to be great.
So maybe Kmet being more of the primary blocking tight end than anything else. Okay. Yeah. I like that. That's way more optimistic than I was. I was going back and forth with him because I'm thinking, all right, he's going to have a depressed target ceiling because of all the other weapons here. But then I'm like, if I'm worried about Cole Kmet, who could just be that blocking tight end, then it seems like there's some potential there. So wait. All right, I'm gonna ask you in the water cooler. We can't do it right now. Right. That's the ultimate tease. Water cooler coming up next. Oh, you already know what time it is. Time for that Fantasy Life Water Cooler where we go through all the news that you might have missed there in the first hour, do a little bit of a recap and get you up to speed here with what's going on in the NFL. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis with you here. Fantasy Life on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. The other place that you can get all the news and in on all of that action is at fantasylife.com. Go subscribe to that newsletter, 100% free in your inbox still 7 days a week. So make sure you go and check that out. Same with all of our articles. Still 100% free. So make sure you go if you want those projections. If you want any pieces that we have, they're all amazing at fantasylife.com. A lot of dynasty stuff going on too, by the way, Adam. It's fun. It's dynasty season now where you get all of your, you get all your rookie drafts in and it's a fun time. So fantasylife.com to go and check those out. Speaking of dynasty and making some maybe, no, that's not a tough decision with Emeke Egbuka, but I did want to say, saw this quote from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers general manager talking about how their selection of Emeke Egbuka had nothing to do with how Chris Godwin's rehab from his dislocated ankle is going. But there is one part of this that I was like, ooh, okay, hang on, we have to pay attention here. He said, Emeke Egbuka does allow us to make sure that Chris does do his rehab correctly and we don't rush him and all those things. So that does give us a little bit of comfort with the pick that we can do that to make sure that he's not rushed back. But Egbuka had nothing to do with where Chris is at in his rehab currently. So that's the one thing, Adam, where we always want to make sure that we keep tabs on all of the offseason injuries, how the rehabs are going, if there's ever going to be a setback. And Chris Godwin's one that we talked about a lot after the season because when he went down in week 7, he was on his way to having a fantastic fantasy football season. So for them, saying we kind of knew that too because they signed Chris Godwin to that 3-year extension as well. So we know Chris Godwin's going to stick around. Mike Evans is going into the final year of his contract, so that might be the one that we watch out for. Emeke Egbuka, great dynasty draft, dynasty guy to target for this season. We might not see in redraft if you take him, one of these guys is going to have to go down, but now they won't, they don't have to rush Chris Godwin, so we'll just have to wait and see if he's good for week 1.
Yeah, I am going to believe what they said. I think this is, I think the quote was, this is for the immediate and the future, because you got to remember, Evans is 32 when the season begins. So, and Godwin is 29 coming off this serious injury. So we would have preferred a different landing spot where Egbuka could immediately go into a role where he could command targets. That's not the case now, but it would not be surprising if one or both of these guys got injured. We saw it last year. And so I think Egbuka late, especially since you don't have to pay much for him, I would be interested in taking him late, and he'll be on your bench. And you see what happens. You don't root for injuries, but it's the NFL. No. Guys are going to get hurt, and you want to have the potential player that's on your bench that could step into a big role. So I'm still willing to take Egbuka late. And it clearly shows they really love him. To take him in the first round when they might have had some other needs, they clearly like him a lot. So clearly, but better for dynasty, better for long term. Yeah. But there's still a possibility at some point this year that, look, I don't think they are worried about Godwin either. They paid him a ton of money, right? So you don't throw that money around if you're not confident the player is going to be back early in the year.
Exactly. And that's why I say maybe the one thing might be watching Mike Evans and his contract, because again, he's going into the final year, but Mike Evans is a Tampa Bay Buccaneer through and through. So it's a wait and see game, but I can already picture it, Adam, because Emeke Egbuka is going to be one, late October where people are saying, calling us and saying, okay, I need immediate help and I have to get rid of Emeke Egbuka or I have to drop him. And it feels like if there's no injuries up until that point, that'll be a conversation that you have. He's going right now off the board, wide receiver 49 on Underdog. And again, that's Underdog, that's best ball. It's going to be a lot different than when you go into redraft. Some of your league mates might like him a little bit more than that, but that does put him in the range of Darnell Mooney, Cooper Kupp, Luther Burden, we'll talk about Luther Burden, but Luther Burden, Brandon Ayuk, Khalil Shakir. Those are like the five going around him. So I can just already picture it though, where it's going to have to be a waiting game with Emeke Egbuka. And at some points you might not have the luxury of being able to wait. We know injuries always happen to us during the NFL season, fantasy football. We kind of have to scramble when that does happen. So he could be one where you have him on your bench. And unfortunately it might be one where you say, I can't wait anymore. And then if I do that, Adam, that's going to be, the next week he's going to go off. And it's going to happen, and that's just how it's going to work. But I can already picture those conversations and those phone calls coming in with him.
You have to deal with it. I went through the same thing last year with Jalen McMillan. I had wrote in a preseason newsletter for Fantasy Life, like, draft this guy late. Yes, it doesn't look good right now, but if something happens to Godwin or Evans, we like this offense. Baker Mayfield's playing well. And he started slowly, didn't get much of an opportunity, and then both went down, and he didn't hit immediately. So there were a lot of leagues where, because you're talking now middle of the season, 6 teams on bye, you have injuries, you have to make these decisions. And at the time I said, all right, I'm going to have to cut McMillan. It's not happening. And of course, down the stretch, if you had him, he might have won you a championship. And that tends to happen with some of these rookie wide receivers, that they take some time to acclimate to the NFL. Maybe they don't get the opportunity immediately. Then the opportunity comes late in the year, and they just hit a comfort level. And McMillan, what was it, 7 touchdowns in the last 5 games? It was
insane.
Could have used that. But hey, look, you're going to have those regretful cuts. In any fantasy sport, it's going to happen. You can't just sit there and stash everyone. It's impossible, especially with injuries. So I don't regret it. You always make the best decision with the information you have at hand at the time. Sometimes you will be like, yeah, that was stupid. Why did I cut him? But I don't remember every team that I had him on, but for the most part, I don't remember regretting it, just because needed someone on a roster to produce for that given week. Because, especially last year, you had even wasn't week 14, 6 teams on bye?
Yeah,
or
it was something. There was
a critical week. It was like the last, or maybe the first week of the playoffs in the FFPC, and last week of the regular season.
Big teams like the Eagles, I remember it being like, it was nuts.
So yeah, you get to that point in the season where you might have 6 teams on bye and you have some injuries and you just can't hold any longer, especially for a player that wasn't producing, because we really didn't see the first big game for McMillan until December 8th. I don't know what week that is offhand. Probably week 12. I don't know. But he had 4 for 59 and 2 touchdowns. That was like his first really good week. So he didn't do much until the final month of the season. So there were people who probably held him for 8 weeks, hoping, and especially because the Godwin injury was a Monday night game. Was it week 7?
Yeah, week 7.
Okay. So yeah. So you held McMillan. You're like, all right, I got it. I got him. And then he doesn't do anything with Godwin out. So
those were big Kate on games too.
It made sense. All right.
Yeah.
Gotta cut him now. And then, of course, down the stretch. So, you're just not going to be able to stash everyone. But you could see Egbuka follow that pattern that we saw from McMillan last year, which is why in best ball, yes, you want to take him, redraft. Like you said, there'll come a point in the season if Evans and Godwin and McMillan, they're all healthy. Egbuka was playing a role, but just not commanding enough of a target share where you're going to have to make that decision.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and again, patience. But it has to work perfectly for you to be patient, and we understand that too, because we always say, be patient with these rookies. But like you just said, Adam, there comes a time where all the wide receivers last season went down, and you had to do something, and you had to go to the waiver wire. And unfortunately, you do have to cut the guys that aren't immediately producing for you. So yeah, Emeke Egbuka, I still really like him. You like the talent, you like the overall offense. By the way, Baker Mayfield QB1, is that just how it's going to finish out? Everything like this was great for Baker, but yeah, maybe wide receiver low end, wide receiver 4. That's being optimistic with Emeke Egbuka. Maybe more of a wide receiver 5 with upside with those season long formats. But yeah, give me a piece of Baker Mayfield in almost all fantasy leagues. That's fun. He's expensive though.
Yeah,
QB8.
that's the thing. He's what, like QB7 off the board, I would guess.
Yeah, 7-8 right now, which
it's fair though.
It's like, not if bad.
That's where he has to be. Like, you can say what you want, but this is now 2 years in a row with 2 different offensive coordinators where he has produced. There might have been some people that were skeptical last year saying, could he do it without Canales? Well, he did again. And there's just so many weapons there, and it's just a good fit. So, I mean, in leagues with 6 points for a passing touchdowns, where obviously he gets a little bit more of a boost, he was 4th in points per game. That is crazy. And you could have gotten him in the last round or 2, or potentially off the waiver
wire. We had people calling in, and I said, if Baker's there, I wrote him in. He was because in those waiver wires that I did at Fantasy Life, like, we always look at guys that are less than, not more than 40% rostered, and he would be there. So he's QB7 going right after Patrick Mahomes at QB6.
Yeah, look, it makes sense. I mean, it feels tough to pay that price, but that's where he has to slot in with this way the offense is producing. And I don't think you could expect the same amount of touchdowns as last year, touchdown passes, but even if he goes down a little bit, he's still going to produce. And I didn't have any last year, so
tough. Imagine us talking, however many, 6 years ago that Baker Mayfield, we'd be talking about Baker Mayfield like
if this? We would have just said 2 or 3 years ago, hey,
true.
You're going to draft Baker Mayfield as the QB7 in 2025. You're like, what?
Okay.
How many quarterbacks had their career ended that were talking like this?
No, exactly. And on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like, it's just, I don't know. It's crazy how time changes here. But yeah, again, Emeke Egbuka, good dynasty, good in redraft. You just might have to be a little bit patient there. We don't want injuries though. So I can see it happen already, Adam. I can see it happening with those October phone calls. Like, now can I drop Emeke Egbuka? And we're going to say, yeah. And then what's going to happen?
He becomes a starter.
Then don't call us back. We know. We know that. Next part of the water cooler here. Can we just for a second talk about Elijah Moore? Does this do anything for you with Elijah Moore going over, heading to Buffalo? 1-year deal worth up to $5 million. I don't know. I just saw this and I wanted to make sure that we mentioned it because, this Buffalo offense, Khalil Shakir is obviously the wide receiver 1, and that's who we're going to go and target for this offense. James Cook got out of this kind of unscathed for the draft because I was talking like maybe they add a rookie running back, but they weren't going to do that. Does Elijah Moore slot in anywhere for you?
I don't see it. I don't think that the Bills are going to change what has worked, and that's basically spreading the ball around. And we've been teased by Elijah Moore. We've hoped for things to be better for him, and it just hasn't happened. So I just think that the Bills are going to play the same way and to just spread the ball around. It's worked for them. They brought in Josh Palmer. You got Keon Coleman. They're hoping Dalton Kincaid is healthier. It's going to be a tough offense for fantasy, which is crazy, right? Because we're sitting here, we're like, oh, so this team averages 30 points per game. We must have a ton of fantasy stars on this team, right? Nope. It's Josh Allen. Even James Cook, which we've had discussions about. He was carried heavily by touchdowns last year. Is that going to repeat again? Is he going to be involved in the passing game? Will lose third down work again? So, yeah, it's tough. Khalil Shakir is probably the guy that I want the most here. He seems to be the guy Josh Allen looks for in key third downs. He can move the chains. But again, not explosive plays from him. Like, he's more, at best, a wide receiver 3. And I did draft him last year. It was solid in PPR leagues. You weren't counting on him for much outside, 10, 11, 12 points per game. But, yeah, like, why would the Bills change what's working? Now, it hasn't resulted in a Super Bowl yet. They keep getting to the playoffs, and the problem is you have to go through Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, which isn't easy, but it's not like this offense isn't producing and putting up points every week, and it's just spreading the ball around, and I don't see it changing.
Maybe he beats out Curtis Samuel. That's the only guy.
Yeah, that would, I would say that.
I wouldn't be shocked with that. Joshua Palmer, like when you said that, I kind of forgot that Joshua Palmer was there. Just like, no, sorry, Joshua Palmer. It's not you. Well, no, it is you. It's not us. But that's the only thing I can see with Elijah Moore is maybe beating out Curtis Samuel. But even then, I mean, you won't know if you're in redraft and you're not taking him in best ball. You won't know when to start him again, unless it's injuries and you just look. But at that point, it feels like he won't even, in some leagues, especially if you're not in those deeper leagues, like he's just going to be on the waiver wire. So I wanted to bring it up just in case. I'm hoping for a better Keon Coleman year too, right? I saw you read about the wrist injury, and of course after the season ends they tell you how he was still hurt with the wrist injury and it really affected him. So maybe that's what they're waiting for, is Keon Coleman to step up, and then it really really helps define them and get them past like any team in the playoffs where they can finally make a Super Bowl. But yeah, Khalil Shakir, I'm with you, is the only guy. And like you said, more of a wide receiver 3. You don't necessarily want to walk. It wouldn't be awful, but you don't want to walk away with him as your wide receiver 2. Then you've waited a little bit too long.
Yeah, and look, it's not like the Bills have been close. It's just they got to beat that guy named Patrick Mahomes, which has been a problem.
Easier said than done, yeah.
And that's why I think the criticism of Buffalo is like, because you see these games and you're like, okay, you just need that dependable one who can make a big catch in a key spot. Because last year in that AFC Championship, do you remember who led them in receiving? It was Matt Collins with 73.
I forgot about that.
And then James Cook had 49 receiving yards. So, yeah, I mean, Coleman had 1 catch for 12, Cooper 4 for 33, Shakir 6 for 46. And they lost by 3. But I think when you're trying to go through the fine details and like, okay, what do the Bills need to do? We kind of look and go, okay, where's that go-to guy in a key spot? Because I know there's been a lot of talk in Buffalo about that, like getting that. But to be fair, they've had a lot of success. It's just sometimes you're in an era, and all sports, we could look at this like, well, if they were in an era when Michael Jordan played or Patrick, maybe they would have won. And that's kind of what Buffalo is facing right now. And get that home field advantage. And
that's what they have to do.
Yeah.
You have to get that first round bye and just hope, pray.
It's not like, look, they've come close to knocking off Kansas City a couple times.
They have.
And just haven't been able to do it, get over that hump. Baltimore dealing with the same thing. Like, Baltimore has a great year every year. And then it's like, oh, okay, they can't beat Kansas City in the playoffs.
Yeah. That's when those annoying conversations start to come around, when they talk about, Josh and Lamar, and you're like, okay, all right, let's rein it in here a little bit. But I will.
For fantasy, we don't care because they're great.
Yeah, for fantasy, I'm like, hey, listen, they're our top quarterbacks, so we don't really care. But the one thing that's crazy with the passing game, and you saying, or just overall the Bills offense in general, is that they are able to make it that far. So why would you change something that's working? And when you look at even Khalil Shakir last year, and we say, well, he was obviously the wide receiver 1, and we wanted to target him in fantasy, he still only walked away with 821 yards, 4 touchdowns. And the difference between that, Keon Coleman not having a good rookie season, 556 yards, still had 4 touchdowns. And then you go 448, Dalton Kincaid. Matt Collins is still in there with 378. Dawson Knox, 311. And even Amari Cooper was getting involved, 297. So, yeah, and oh my gosh, Matt Collins with 5 touchdowns, by the way.
Yeah,
gross.
They just spread it around. And look, we do not like it for fantasy. Well, Josh Allen's going to get his rushing touchdowns. He's going to put up his numbers. That's the guy you can count on. James Cook, I did like last year, drafting him a couple leagues around 4. I'm definitely concerned about, because it really was touchdown based for Cook last year.
Yes, 16, yes.
Yeah, and can we expect that again after he didn't do that his first couple years in the league? Clearly last year looks like, and the thing is, when you watch him, he's explosive. We know that he can do it in the pass game. He can do it on the ground. They also had a lot of games where they won pretty easily, where they were able to pull him early. But I've said this before. If you ask most people, hey, how many carries do you think James Cook had last year? Most people would be like, oh yeah, he probably had about 250. No, that's not how many carries he had. It was I think 207. Yeah, 207, right? And it felt like a lot more. And he played 16 games. He only had 32 receptions, too. It went down. And especially in the second half of the season, that's when you saw a lot more Ty Johnson. And Ray Davis is there, too. So I think Cook is a real challenging player this year because he's extremely talented. He's on a great offense. But we saw the first, I guess you can't count his rookie year. He only had 89 carries. But in 2023, he had 2 rushing touchdowns and 4 receiving, and then went to 16 rushing and 2 receiving last year. So I guess you want to say probably he's more in the middle. And if that's the case and we don't see the volume go up, that's not going to be great for fantasy for Cook, who finished last year 10th in points per game at the running back position. And that was a year where a lot of running backs stayed healthy and had massive volume, but he was definitely boosted by the touchdown. So
he was. Touchdown regression is probably coming.
I mean, someone might argue, well, it's one of the top offenses in the league. Why can't he do it again? But I'm
because then they'll have to pay him.
Well, that too. Well, again, they're not worried because they'll probably just move on, right? They'll just move on. So he's generally like around RB12, right?
He's right now RB15.
Oh, okay. So he dropped a little bit. I guess because Chase Brown moved up after the draft.
Chase Brown moved up. Honestly, Omarion Hampton moved up a lot, which we talked about him. Breece Hall is still there at RB13.
He's another challenging one.
Chase Brown went RB11.
I'm fine with it now.
Yeah. They didn't. And then Kyron Williams is RB12.
Yeah.
And then you get into the Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving. So it was a Chase Brown jump and an Omarion Hampton jump as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Cook is, again, great player. It's all about how they utilize him. And you got to expect a decrease in touchdowns. But maybe he could still get 10 rushing and 3 receiving. That's not bad.
Exactly.
Can he go back to – he had 237 carries 2 years ago. Can we get back to that level? Because they had a lot of blowouts where they pulled him early, I think. Yeah, they won by 37, 21, 24. That's a factor where those games, 11 carries, 9 carries. So – if they get more competitive games, that maybe keeps them on the field a little bit. So maybe it balances out and he still finishes in that area.
They're playing at home against, the Ravens, Bengals, Chiefs, Dolphins, Patriots, Saints, Jets, Eagles, Bucks.
Okay, that sounds like a lot of competitive games in there.
That's a tough game.
Patriots are going to be better in the division.
Buccaneers, we already know. I'm expecting a jump from the Jets. Sorry, Saints fans, we're not going to mention you. And then away, Falcons, Panthers, Browns, Texans, Dolphins, Patriots, Jets, Steelers.
Okay, offhand, that sounds like a pretty
competitive
good schedule.
Yeah. Not good for it's going to be competitive. For us, we always want to see if those tougher matchups are coming up because that keeps them in games, like you just said. It was the same thing with the Eagles, where they were just blowing them out. And we were just like, okay.
That's what it really hurt A.J. Brown in a big way.
Yeah. All right. That was the Fantasy Life water cooler. Again, fantasylife.com to go and check out all of our articles and that newsletter in your inbox 7 days a week, 100% free. We've been teasing it all episode. What are we doing? Like a podcast? Like all show we've been teasing it, but I do want to go through those biggest fantasy veteran winners. And I do want to really dive deep into not only DeAndre Swift, but I do want to continue talking about the Cowboys and if we really should be looking at Javonte Williams as a running back we target this season. We're going to do that coming up next. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam Ronis with you right here, Fantasy Life on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Continue to go through the biggest fantasy winners, but we're talking about some of the veteran winners here, the guys that got out unscathed, Adam, when you're looking at the draft. I thought for sure, listen, when we talked about Chicago, not only did we talk about them drafting a running back, I mean, there were rumors that they were trading up for Ashton Jeanty. So, like, it was all there for them to go and do it. But you know what? They decided we don't have to. We've got running back DeAndre Swift here, and he was one of the biggest veteran winners, I think, from a couple weekends ago. So, underdog ranked right now, I believe, and this might have changed, but RB32. Projection rank, by the way, RB16. So there's a big range of outcomes for DeAndre Swift. But when we look at him, I know that he's not going to blow us out of the water when we look at some of the stats from the previous years, especially some of those advanced metrics. But, he's still at this point is going to have the volume in 2025 that we always want to chase. And so while it's still DeAndre Swift, and I know some people are just going to be turned off by the name alone, if you want a piece of this offense, DeAndre Swift is going to have a lot of opportunities by himself in 2025.
Yeah, and right now it's a good price. So I think you want a piece of this offense, especially if you believe in maybe they become more pass heavy. But either way, Swift is the starting running back in this offense. So, could catch passes, could get touchdowns. And yeah, we didn't expect this to happen. We thought they would bring someone in. It did not happen. So yeah, right now, I'd take him at that price.
I updated RB 28, so people know.
Yeah,
I mean, he's going to continue climbing. Yeah,
especially if you go one running back early, load up on receivers, maybe sneak in a tight end, and then he's your RB2. I'm fine with that.
He's never finished worse than RB 24 in PPR points per game since coming into the league. That's since 2020. So I think RB 16, is. Man, that would be nice, because if you're getting him right now, he's outperforming his ADP. And so I don't know, he's gonna have this, revamped offensive line. They got help for Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams hopefully is going to have a better year 2 than his rookie year. So 26 years old, explosive. I don't know. I kind of like it.
Yeah, the offensive line was a big issue last year. He did get volume last year, only had the 5 rushing touchdowns, and was RB 23 in points per game in PPR format. So again, there's not a high ceiling there, but if you're talking RB 28, RB 29 area, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, explosive pass catcher. Not explosive for DeAndre. So I'm talking more about the pass catching there. But yeah, just something for you to look out for, because he was definitely a big winner. This was RB 32 just, a week ago. So he's going to continue. And now RB 28, he's going to continue to climb. So if you can get him, like you said, in that range, I feel like is going to definitely outperform that ADP. And it's the same thing with, let's go seriously talk about the Cowboys, because I think you were just kind of we brought it up before. It was like, yeah, I can't really believe it, but then it's Jerry Jones, so we can believe it. But one of the bigger winners is Javonte Williams. If we're talking about just veterans who walked away from the draft and didn't have much going on for them, because the Cowboys were another team where we said it doesn't really matter who they get, whatever running back in those early rounds, whoever they draft, we're going to go and get them for fantasy football. And Jerry Jones said, no, we don't really need that. So Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, they did get Jaden Blue late. That was a day 3 pick. So you do have Jaden Blue there. But really, Adam, are we going to be talking this offseason about drafting Javonte Williams because he is the RB1 in this offense?
I will not. Okay. I'm not going to do it. I don't care how cheap it is. And maybe all of a sudden he discovers his form. But look, he's going to catch passes. He's going to get the volume. But that could be like 3 yards. Just move the chains. I'd rather take Blue. I know he's not the biggest back, and he's not going to get the huge workload, but I'd rather take him a couple rounds later. He's going to be cheaper, and I'll take my shot there. Like, what are we expecting from Javonte Williams? It's just
the Javonte, I don't think you from what was it now, 3 years ago?
Before the injury, I'd be surprised. I mean, he got paid $3 million?
Yeah, it's not a lot.
No, so not a lot of interest there. I think this is a case where it's like, well, there's no one else. He's the RB1. We got to take him. No, I'm going to pass.
You're like, actually, watch this. I won't take him.
Yeah, I'm not.
Listen, the range of outcomes with the new floor ceiling logic at fantasylife.com, floor projections 8.4 points per game. And really the ceiling is 16.8, but you could see it right in the middle at 10.9 points per game for Javonte Williams. So yeah, I might take him just a little sprinkle, just a little bit more in best ball, just in case that does happen. But I'm not going to put too much into Javonte Williams. Like you said, $3 million contract, which does clear, if we're looking at the money, does clear Miles Sanders. He got $1.4 million. And like I said, 5th rounder for Jaden Blue. So Blue is explosive, and he has pretty good, decent pass catching ability as well. But it's still, we can't turn away from the fact that it was still a win for Javonte. It was just more surprising than anything else. And you didn't get a wide receiver. So really, for us in fantasy, there were 2 options here, and we just wanted, one of them. But walking away with 0 of them was pretty brutal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the receiver is more glaring. But look, this hurts Dak Prescott. I mean, Prescott has been a guy that has always produced in fantasy when healthy. But he is the type of quarterback that needs weapons around him. There are certain quarterbacks that elevate the play of others. Patrick Mahomes, obviously, that's an elite guy. But I think Dak's the type of guy that needs the talent around him. And it's just not there. It's just CeeDee Lamb, and that's it. Maybe Jake Ferguson, as we talked about earlier. So that hurts a guy like Dak Prescott. And it took the Cowboys also about halfway through the season to finally turn it over to Rico Dowdle last year. Yeah. And then he was good. But yeah, there's definitely concerns about this offense. So, yeah, was Javonte Williams a winner based on what happened in the draft? Yes, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to be like, all right, I got to get Javonte Williams on my fantasy team now just because he's the projected leader in the backfield in touches. I'm not drafting him. I'm not excited. I wonder how much he would move up, but I can't see taking him in the top 35 of running backs.
He is RB 39.
Okay, yeah, that's about the area I would put him in.
Jaden Blue is going, he's really close, RB 45.
Yeah, I'd rather wait and take him. I understand the workload you can't project because he's not the biggest back, but I feel like you could give Javonte 14 touches and Blue 8. I think Blue will have more yards.
Yeah, and I think the overall thought, especially with Dak Prescott, because for as much crap that Dak Prescott gets for fantasy football, it is kind of an interesting conversation because when he was able to, first of all, just be healthy, and they had that season where they led the league in scoring, Tony Pollard comes out with and we can talk about Tony Pollard overall because he has some inefficiency issues as well, but he was able to come out and be the overall RB14 in fantasy football when all that stuff was going right. So that not necessarily to say it's not going to be Javonte Williams. I'm just saying
that Pollard's way better than Javonte.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. It's not
and this Cowboys offense is not close to what it was.
It's just saying it's more to say that Dak Prescott, when things go right, can these running backs. We saw it with Tony Pollard, but it just doesn't feel like it's going to be Javonte. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm like, that's where you could tell yourself, hey, Tony Pollard was able to do this and be RB14, but you're right, he was overall better than Javonte Williams at that time when it happened. So
and remember last year when Dak was healthy, he was far from the pace that we saw 2 years ago. It wasn't good. He had 11 touchdowns in 8 games and 8 interceptions. He had 9 interceptions in 2023. So he's had some really good fantasy years. Before last year, he had 36 and 37 touchdowns in a span of 3 years when he was healthy. But it's not the same anymore. They just don't have the same weapons. The offensive line is not as good as it was. So that's the problem, because you can look at Dak and make an argument, well, if he's healthy, why can't – there's just too many other quarterbacks now too, where you look and you go, well, this quarterback is in a better situation. You feel better about this quarterback. It's difficult to put Dak in the top 15.
I'm not taking, if we're finishing off with Javonte Williams, I'm going to take who we're going to talk about here in just 1 second. Bayshul Tuten ahead of him. I'm going to take Ramondre Stevenson ahead of him. What about you? Is that where you draw the line, Ramondre?
Yeah. I mean, look, yeah, he's still going to...
I think he's still going to be okay.
Yeah, I'd take him over Javonte.
Tajay Spears or Javonte Williams?
That's closer. Probably Tajay. Nah, I guess I go Javon. I don't want to make it. I can't click on him.
I
can't click on him.
You can't. How about this? Trey Benson or Javonte Williams?
Trey Benson.
Oh my! What? Oh, okay. Isaac Rendo. I thought you were going to stop there. Okay,
Javonte.
There it is. I was trying to find your limit of where you would take him. All right, there we go. Isaac Rendo or Javonte Williams over Isaac Rendo. That's where it stops.
Let's see what happens to McCaffrey before we're not even.
It's going to be great.
August
He's in the
yet.
greatest shape of his life. I've already heard that 4 times. Best shape of his life.
He's going to have an injury in August.
Why would you say that?
It's a prediction.
Have
I'm
you?
not rooting
I
for
might
it.
flip. I might flip because I still haven't made my full decision on McCaffrey. I might flip though. If he's in the best shape of his life, I might take
Well,
him a couple
you're
times.
going to have to take him late first, early second. We know
Yeah,
he's
he's
going to
at
be
the
a guy
turn.
that rises.
He's probably going to end up in the first round.
He will.
Pick
Yeah.
12.
If we're mid-August and everything's fine, he's healthy, he'll be going in the first
For
round.
sure, for sure. Let's talk about Bayshul Tuten and just some more of the fantasy fallout from these rookies. I do want to, we didn't get to talk about Cam Scadaboo the way that we should talk about Cam Scadaboo, so we're going to talk about him as well, and just some of these other, rookies that came into maybe not the best positions, but they could have a spot to shine. We're going to go through their names coming up next. All right, fantasy football fans, sure, the NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it, and all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Are you more out on the Cowboys going into 2025 than you were going into 2024, or is it about the same?
Probably the same.
That's
I don't feel great.
Well, then they can't ruin your weekends.
That's true.
Kind of. Like, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, having Dak Prescott healthy helps, but again, they just did not do enough to upgrade the offense. I mean, and the crazy part is, like, I can't really crush the draft. They actually, they took players that Booker they reached on in the 1st round, but as Araku and Revel, they got values for, they fell. Blue's fine. So, yeah, it just didn't work out. Again, they were going to take McMillan at 12, and the Panthers took him at 8. What are you going to do?
Tough. Oh, that would have been fun with McMillan over there. That's but what could have been?
But playing in a division with Philly and Washington is not fun.
Yeah. It's going to be fine. You hear that high pitch, like, everything's going to be fine. It's going to be great. And we're going to talk about Jake Ferguson for a really long time. And then it'll be just as disappointing. So as long as you're going in with no expectations, they can't hurt you over the weekend. So that's great.
Expectations really matter. Like, it can change your perspective on the way you view a team, right? If you have low expectations, they surprise to get in the playoffs. It's a good year. If you have really high expectations, they don't make the playoffs and lose in the first round, it stinks. So, like, I have high expectations for the Mets, so that could be a problem because they could disappoint.
Don't say it. They'll be great. Everything's fine. See, I have no expectations for the Mariners, and then they go
and now they're the hottest team in baseball.
Well, now it's May. You and I were texting just a couple days ago. It's May, so why don't you call me when we're just like a couple weeks out from the playoffs, and then we'll see how I am then. I don't know how to feel about the Seahawks yet because I loved the Grays. They had talk about a team that had a great draft. I was really happy with it, and that Gray Zabel pick is the exact one that I wanted for. They needed some interior offensive line help, and he brings just that. But I don't know. Still with it, Darnold, and I just don't know yet. I'll come back to you on that. No receipt. I don't know. Anyway, Bayshul Tuten. That's who I wanted to talk about. These more lower tier guys, though, that could, in fantasy drafts, especially if you're drafting in some of these deeper formats, like you're going to know about Bayshul Tuten, running back now for the Jaguars. A few early projections, ceiling projection, not great. 11.8 points per game. Floor projection, still not great. 5.3 points per game. Right in the middle is at 7 points per game for the median projection. The best case scenario, right, would involve him fully taking over the backfield at some point, which I don't know. It could be possible, right? Because you've got Travis Etienne ahead of him and obviously Tank Bigsby. But for everything that it's worth, Thor Nystrom, when he was doing all of his draft prep, loved Bayshul Tuten. He had a really good combine, which is probably where you started to hear about him. So I just don't expect Etienne and Bigsby to fade away. That's the one thing here, Adam, when we're looking at Bayshul Tuten. He might have some of the talent, and he was a round 4 pick, but it just seems like it's a long way to go, but I still want to have an eye on him and maybe a few shares of him just in case.
Yeah, well, that's what we're doing when you get into this territory of running backs. It comes down to opportunity, and a lot of times that could be because of an injury in front of them or one of the running backs is not producing. So this is ideally in fantasy, what you want to do, you want to load up on a lot of these running backs. You can't have them all, but you want to have several on your roster just in case. So, he's got the speed, and maybe there's an opportunity if there's an injury. So,
if he was in a committee, you want to hear his numbers for in a committee? If it was like if he was the lead there, 50% of the attempts, 40% rep participation, his range of outcomes would then be the floor 8.8 points per game, median projection 11.5, and then ceiling 17.4. So that's what you have to hope for.
Yeah, and it's an offense that I think we're feeling better about. We're optimistic, and this is an opportunity for Trevor Lawrence to produce, and I think people are not really interested in him right now, and I like the price on him. Yeah, I would take him cheap as my QB2 at this point.
Trevor?
Yeah,
I would.
I mean, you have to feel
that's the big conversation. Like he was coming in as a generational talent. That was what he was supposed to be. And listen, he's gotten some pretty bad luck just thrown his way when we talk about coaching and all this stuff that could hold him back. He's QB 18 right now.
Yeah, I'm taking him in that spot every time. I mean, he's finished as wasn't 2022 like a QB1 season for him, or close?
Close.
Yeah,
I want to say yes.
Because he had 5 rushing touchdowns that year, 25 touchdowns, 8 picks, 4,000 yards. So he's shown it. And look, I'm not saying he's Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, but we're quick to give up on these guys. And you mentioned the coaching staffs, that hasn't been great. Look, if you believe in this coaching staff now, and you bring in you got Brian Thomas, you got Hunter. I mean, right? I mean, look, they traded so much draft capital to get Hunter at 2, where they're primarily going to use him as a wide receiver. So they really have a high belief in him. So he's got a couple of big time targets right now. So based on the price, I'm taking him there.
All right,
because
I like it.
If it doesn't work out, you can cut him in redraft. And even best ball, I'm interested as a QB2.
Yeah, you're right. 2022.
Especially if you have Brian Thomas and you want to stack him.
For sure. That could be. Those are one of the stacks where, last season it was like, okay, I think I do want to target him. But now if you want that late stack where you're able to get Brian Thomas Jr. and then you can wait and continue and get Trevor Lawrence, you're right. QB 12 in 2022, QB 17 in 2023, and then QB 24 in 2024.
Yeah, and it's easy, that's it. I'm done with him. But if you believe in Liam Cohen, we saw what he did last year, and you got some weapons for Lawrence to throw to. You're not paying a high price. So, I think he could be undervalued.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Continuing on, let's talk a little bit more about just some of these, not necessarily underrated, but they went later in drafts, and we want to see where they should fall. Cam Scatteraboo. Let's talk about Jack Bash as well, Las Vegas Raiders' new wide receiver. We're going to do that coming up next. Oh, we've got you covered. You already know that. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam Ronis with you right here on Sirius XM. Make sure you keep it locked, though. You've got a great day of programming here, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, right after us, though. Rotoballer Radio with Scott Engel and Michael Florio. So keep it locked right here. So speaking about the Greenwich Street Tavern League, I'm trying to look for our roster. It wasn't good, by the way. From last year. But we're back in. I'm back in. I know if Ani's listening, he's going to be back in.
We'll see. He might be scared. He was talking all the trash, and then
what killed
he
us?
Sunk you. He brought you down.
No, half of it's me, because you know what we did? We looked at it. We said, look at Kyler Murray. Look at the value. Look at Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 1-2 turn. Brutal. We had some good players, though, straight up. I mean, Malik Neighbors. We had DJ Moore. Brutal. Javonte Smith. What'd he do? Nothing. We had a little Joe Mixon. We learn and get better. That's what's going to happen.
I had a good year.
You did.
And won money, but didn't win the championship. I had the most points. I think I lost in the semis. I went off a team that just went off in the semis. Like I had no shot.
Yeah, brutal.
That's the unfortunate part of fantasy sport. Oh, it happened to me. I think the worst loss I had this year ever, and I played fantasy a long time, and I play basketball, football, and baseball. I absolutely dominated this fantasy basketball league. I think I won 14 straight weeks.
Whoa.
The closest loss was 6-3. I was 20 games ahead of the next team. Lost in the semifinals
No.
5-4 by one steal because I had a lot of my top guys were out due to injury. Considering how dominant I was, and I think it's the worst loss I ever had in fantasy. And that might be just because it just happened, but I can't. I did have a fantasy football season where I was undefeated going into the finals and lost.
Oh, that's brutal.
That was years ago. That was like when Kurt Warner was the quarterback for the Cardinals. Steve Slayton had a big year for the Texans. So, like, it happened so long ago, but that's the worst. I don't think you ever want to go undefeated into a championship fantasy football. You want to get that loss out of the way because you know your luck is about to run out at some point. But you don't even see that anymore, right? Like, I can't remember. I don't remember a team being in the last few years in any league I've been in that's like undefeated late in the year, right? I think it's just.
I can't think of one either.
I guess everyone has gotten so much better because of this channel, Fantasy Life, and so much information that it's really hard to dominate like that. Unless you play like, with like 6-year-olds and you're like an adult. But who does that outside of Ani Srito?
Stop. Oh, sorry, honey. The shots have been fired. But the thing too is that I haven't experienced that where someone just goes undefeated. But like you said it, the way that information, like you can't even steal anyone off the waiver wire anymore because if you have Sleeper, if you have ESPN, you know immediately with these guys, and that's why it's so annoying playing with you because I'll get the Sleeper notification at the same time. I'll go to the waiver wire, and if it's the open period, and I'll look and it'll say, oh, Adam Ronis took so and so. That happened at least twice last year. That was annoying.
Oh, that was probably the host league because in GST we only we do 2 waiver wire periods. And even in those leagues, like with 20 roster spots, you have to be 2 weeks ahead. Like you have to speculate and take the third string running back and have him on your roster.
Whatever it was annoying. It was annoying.
That's what I do.
That's you. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us here today. We'll be back here next Sunday. Make sure you stick around. We'll see you then.